So today, I want to talk about Donald Trump and say, Namaste, Trump, which means the divine in me bows to the divine in you. I acknowledge your humanity. Now, let me be clear. In the ideal world, Donald Trump would not be President of the United States for the last 4 years. He would not be president for the next 4 years. There are many people, many people, who would do a much better job. However, the Democrats and the Republicans have given us lemons. And so, maybe we can make lemonade out of the situation. Maybe we can create the political will, the moral force, to end poverty, end mass incarceration, and end the endless wars. And if we do those things, and Donald Trump gets reelected President of the United States, maybe it's worth it. I think it is, which is why I will vote for Donald Trump under those specific conditions. If he signs the blueprint for a better America into law by October 30th, I will vote to re-elect him President of the United States. Now, just because I'm willing to do that, the next question is, do you think Donald Trump is willing to sign such a piece of legislation? That's a fair question. I got this the other night on Twitter. Somebody said, do you really think Donald Trump is interested in ending poverty? Probably not. I'm pretty sure he doesn't wake up every morning thinking, how can I lift tens of millions of Americans out of poverty? However, I do think that for the same reason Andrew Yang had a lot of crossover support from Republicans, that universal basic income, which will end poverty, has a lot of support in Donald Trump's base. And if we can persuade his base, he will get out in front of the parade. We can make universal basic income palatable to him. Not the least of which reasons is the spin that the Blueprint for a Better America puts on universal basic income. Everyone gets an American Union job. $300 a week for adults, $100 a week for kids. Everyone gets an American Union job. And in a country where at least 30 million people have lost their jobs over the last 2 months, the idea that Donald Trump, with his signature, could create 300 million American jobs, the idea of him being able to swoop in and help all those people has probably got to hold a little appeal to him. And honestly, I think the odds of him getting on board with universal basic income are much higher now than they were back in January because of COVID-19. So, does Donald Trump want to end poverty? I think he'd be willing to do it if his political future depended on it. So we've got to make that happen. How about ending mass incarceration? This one, I feel like we've got a little more of a foundation to work with on Donald Trump. The universal basic income obviously includes some taxes, which as a Republican, he's also very sensitive to his base on that topic. But ending mass incarceration is something that he's actually kind of tried to position himself as someone who's made progress on the issue, because he has. 91% of Americans say that the number of people in prison should be reduced. Well, there's a pretty wide consensus that this is a problem, and Donald Trump has made progress on it. He has used the power of the pardon. He has he signed the First Step Act into law, which freed thousands and thousands of federal prisoners. So, is he ready to go much farther than that? I don't know. But if his political life depended on it, I bet you he'd be willing to consider it. So what about ending the endless wars? there's actually a reasonable foundation here to build on. Donald Trump has said repeatedly, he's tweeted a bunch, end the endless wars, bring the troops home. It'd be a good excuse for a giant military parade if you brought home the 250,000 troops and civilians that the military has around the globe. And yeah, so there's something to work with here. Now, to be fair, the Blueprint for a Better America contains things that he does not like. Like, we're going to stop arms sales to Saudi Arabia. Yemen can't wait. And Lockheed Martin sold them the bomb that was dropped on a school bus and blew up dozens of children. We're going to stop doing that under the Blueprint for a Better America. We are going to set a better standard for the rest of the world. Donald Trump likes those arms sales because they create jobs. Well, guess what? We're going to give everybody an American Union job. And if your job is to make bombs that kill and starve other people, now you got a different job. You don't have to do that anymore. We're going to end the endless wars. The Blueprint for a Better America will close Guantanamo Bay, and Donald Trump has said, he wants to send a lot of bad dudes there. This is a campaign rhetoric that hasn't gone anywhere, and so he might want to keep the prison open, but there are very strong principled reasons to close it. But we can appeal to him on the practical reasons, like we spend $540 million a year to operate that prison, to incarcerate 40 men. It's $13 million per prisoner. Okay, we can make a pretty strong economic argument, as well as the principled one, that the prison should be closed, must be closed. I don't know if Donald Trump will be on board with all this stuff, but if he's not, that's okay. He's not the only candidate running for president. The important thing is that we have to be willing to negotiate in good faith. If we unionize the electorate and say, these are our demands, end poverty, end mass incarceration, and end the endless wars, and he says, okay, then we have to follow through. We have to re-elect him if he does these things. That's how the deal works. Some people are concerned that there will be other consequences if he gets re-elected. And that's true. That's not a frivolous concern. One of the big ones is the Supreme Court and the ability to put justices on the court that may be there for a long time, that may overturn Roe versus Wade. That's a really hard thing to know for certain. But what we do know for certain is that in 2014, 49% of the women who had abortions came from families that lived below the poverty line. Okay? We know that by ending poverty, by making healthcare accessible, the number of women who need or want abortions will fall. It will fall. We know that if the Supreme Court were to overturn Roe versus Wade, again, hypothetical, but if that happened, then that principle, that the question of abortion would fall back down to the states, and states would make their own individual decisions. Now, it's fair to assume that some states would be more restrictive, but living in a better America, women in those states will, one, have the economic security to leave. Universal basic income is the freedom to walk away from bad relationships. And so if your state has a bad relationship with you, you can move somewhere else. Because wherever you go, you'll still have your American Union job. You will have that economic security with you. People will vote with their feet if states try to infringe on the right to choose. That's one. The other part is that 40% and rising, 40% of abortions are pharmaceutical abortions. And if the war on drugs has taught us anything, it's that you can't stop people from getting pills if they want them. This is a real concern, but under the blueprint for a better America, it pales, I think, in comparison to the amount of good that this will do, having universal basic income. What else? What are the other concerns if Donald Trump gets reelected? He's a liar. He says things that aren't true all the time. But I feel like most Americans, we've kind of gotten used to that. We know what to expect from him. He is now a known quantity. In 2016, he wasn't. I was really afraid that if he got elected, he would start new wars. That he would just do irrational things and rain down fire and fury on other countries. But he hasn't. I got to say, that's like one of the only real reasons that I'm willing to consider voting for him, is because he hasn't started any new wars. I bet you President Clinton would have. How about the environment? If Donald Trump gets reelected, will it cause critical damage to the environment? Again, not a frivolous concern. But as Andrew Yang was fond of pointing out, it's hard for people to think of the big picture and worry about the penguins drowning in 10 years when you're worried about putting food on your table today, when you're worried about paying your rent this month. Like, once we have universal basic income, that people have that basic economic security, they'll be able to lift their heads up and see the bigger picture more clearly. I think protecting our environment is important. And I think it sort of falls under our fifth duty, under the Preamble, to secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. I think we have a responsibility, an obligation to be good stewards of the earth for our children, for our posterity. And so I imagine that some people with universal basic income, with extra time on their hands, will volunteer to go out and be activists to fight against climate change. You know where the phrase, the description blueprint for a better America came from? It's to appeal to his nature as a builder. He likes to build things with his name. Great. We have a blueprint for him that will improve the lives of tens of millions of Americans, not just today, not just next year, for years, for decades to come. And I understand that there are also millions of Americans who do not want to see Donald Trump get reelected, that they are praying that they will wake up on November 4th, 2020, and that every newspaper headline in the country will be some play on the phrase, "America to Donald Trump, you're fired." At what cost? What cost to be right that America doesn't want Donald Trump? The status quo today, if we do nothing, is that 40 million Americans, including 12 million children, wake up in poverty in our country every single day. The status quo is that millions of Americans are behind bars, that there are more black Americans involved in the prison industrial complex than there were slaves during the Civil War. What is the status quo today? That the United States military, which is the largest single producer of greenhouse gases on the planet, has over 800 foreign military bases. That is the status quo. And we can change that. We can change that if we unionize. We can change that with our fast of moral pressure. All those children who won't grow up in poverty, the deaths of despair, a lot of people who are upset about all 40,000 gun deaths each year, 60% of them are suicides. When we can end the despair, when we have a better America, it will save tens of thousands of lives, improve millions more. And if what it means is that there's an orange man in the White House for another 4 years, that's a trade I'm willing to make. So Namaste, Trump. The divine in me bows to the divine in you. If you end poverty, if you end mass incarceration and end the endless wars, I will vote to re-elect you. I hope you'll join the next Fast for Peace on the 15th and join the American Union. Take that 30-15-50 vow of self-improvement. Give up alcohol for 30 days. Donald Trump has done it. Donald Trump can go 30 days. Donald Trump can go 30 years without alcohol. Join the Fast for Peace on the 15th. Walk 50 miles in your community over the next, between now and Election Day. We can build a better America together, but it's got to start with ourselves. Everybody kicks in, and everybody's going to come out ahead. Till next time, I'm the Gandhi guy. #Fast for Peace. And just keep walking.